So let's talk about the monthly economic report for October 2023 in EVE Online. Very, very exciting news. So, as opposed to the Pearl Abyss financials we just talked about, which were rather gloomy, um, the MER is looking good. I mean, look at these production numbers. The production numbers in EVE Online right now are as high as they haven't been since 2019. How crazy is that? We've seen a steady uptick in production since May, and now we're up here in levels we haven't seen since the mid of 2019. So this is good news. At least people are producing. Similarly with destruction. So destruction is higher than we've seen since 2021. Now, certainly. For production, now if you look at where production is happening, it's mostly happening in nullsec. So nullsec is where it's increasing. All right. If we're looking at destruction, we're seeing destruction increasing in highsec this last month. Now this is not a huge surprise because we have the Crimson Harvest event going on, and that means that we had 90% loot drop. Certainly good incentive of people to go out to destroy some stuff. Also lots of people in space running Crimson Harvest sites. The event overall was arguably a success, and so you have lots of people in space, lots of incentive for destruction, lots of incentive to steal each other's sites as well. And the occasional, dread brawl or other fight here and there, and so destruction numbers are looking quite good. But then again, production again rising in nullsec, and destruction more rising in highsec. When we look at mining is rather flat. Okay, mining has been flat more or less all year with little changes. Now, one explanation that I can think of is Crimson Harvest is not really a mining event. So you probably had a lot of people that typically rely on mining maybe for their income. They went out and ran Crimson Harvest sites, and there wasn't a lot of mining content there. So that might be just people not mining there. However, because we saw an uptick in production and uptick in destruction, raw material prices did increase, and we saw that. We talked about that in the Oz report last month, that we saw significant uptick in raw material prices over the month of October. Now, what you would typically see is if raw material prices are increasing, that's a good incentive for miners to go out there and mine. Now, this month, we actually have the interesting situation that we have the Havoc expansion dropping November 14th, and that means that isn't a huge incentive to go mine for a lot of people. I think it's going to be more of an incentive to people to go out there, try the new content, get out there and fight, and maybe do PvE, but probably not mining. Now, there's always going to be some miners that are going to mine, but there's this, the flipping crowd in between that might flip from mining to ratting or ratting to PvP. And so it may well be that we're going to see a continued uptick in raw material prices, and also an uptick in finished good prices because of that. We have an uptick in production anyway because we have new ships coming out. So if you ask me, right now might be a very, very good time to stock up on some raw materials, or even even intermediary or final finished goods, because the price level, there would be a lot of reason why the price level overall in EVE Online would rise over the next few weeks and month. So that's the overall slide. I'm going to skip the detailed slide on the raw materials because I don't really care that much about it, and it's not that interesting this month. Again, let's look at ISK sinks and faucets. This is the interesting stuff. If we're looking at, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. We're looking at this little calculation here again. We have a starting, a beginning of month money supply of 1,900 trillion ISK, and Then we have faucets of 160 trillion. That is rather high. We have sinks of 100 trillion. That's okay. The active ISK delta is basically zero. Now, if you're wondering how that compares to other months, we got to look at Matthew's Power BI here. And you can see right here that the overall money supply increased quite a bit. If we focus on the active ISK delta alone, then that is basically gone. So in the last month, we always had negative active ISK deltas. That is players leaving the game after being inactive for 3 months or plus, or it's CCP banning bots and their wallets. That's the two things. And we didn't have essentially any of that in October. So granted, last month we had a lot of people leaving the game, and a lot of people leaving the game. But this month we had that was basically in balance. So the people coming back and leaving are about the same in October, with basically no GM actions. Yeah, thanks for Matt for posting that link in chat. So yeah, very helpful tool, this Power BI tool. So overall, money supply goes up rather sharply, and we can see that if we go down to the money supply chart. But let's finish sinks and faucets real quick. We see this huge rising green bar is miscellaneous, and this is war clone blanks, right? This is I'm assuming war clone blanks. If we look at last year's October, it's the same here. People selling back war clone blanks that they looted from the Crimson Harvest event to NPC buy orders. That they're calling that miscellaneous, and so kind of like the Christmas event that pumps in arguably twice as much ISK via overseer personal effects. This is quite a significant ISK faucet, as we can see on the money supply. So Crimson Harvest is a popular event, and it's an event that pumps in a bunch of ISK into the system as well. Overall, we can see transaction tax is rather increasing. So the amount of trade that's happening is increasing. Other than that, yes, the commodity market increasing. This is Crimson Harvest loot, buyback orders, bounty prices up a little bit, or quite a bit over the last month or two. Now, let's look at the money supply. So you can see here, steadily rising money supply in EVE Online. No surprise, we talk about this a lot. It's typical for the money supply in a game to rise over time, but the last few months have been rather sharp or seesaw, I would say. With the overall trend is steepening, I would say. Now, one big reason for that is blue loot in wormholes. There's just a lot of blue loot coming in via wormholes, but also events like the Christmas event or the Crimson Harvest event they do their part. Now, the velocity of ISK is on a continued downtrend. Although if you look at the last 4 or 5 months, it hasn't been that serious. If you want to look at the velocity that matters, like without contracts and plex, then that's the pink line down here, and that hasn't really changed, let's say, in the last 2 years. So that's been rather flat. So we have more ISK in the game, but the ISK isn't really exchanging hands quicker or slower. And if we go back to 2017, 2018, that was a time where the market or the interaction between players was just a lot more lively. So a lot more trade was happening, a lot more ISK was exchanged through contracts, through trade, and so overall this is not a good thing. So certainly this is a number that we would like to see going up, because it's a testament of the interaction between players. Now, one good thing, and I've said this in the past, one good thing about this number not going up is because it does stem inflation. So if this number was going up a lot with the current money supply increase that we're seeing, if this number was going up a lot, we would see a lot of inflation. That would mean that prices would be rising very, very sharply, because more money in the system exchanging hands more frequently means that prices will essentially have to go up. That's basic economics theory. Now, material indices, not a big change there. Mineral index, so the average cost of minerals, going down a little bit, but not significantly. So there's still, I think, a way to go to remove some of the bottlenecks that are in place right now. Especially isogen hasn't really dropped as much as I think that it should. And all the other ones haven't really changed all that much. We're seeing a little bit of a price increase in the secondary producer index, the SPPI, and that is that is intermediary goods, and that is because we've seen increases in raw materials lately, and that will be that, but it's really not significant, not all that significant overall. All right. What else? We have indices over time, blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about the last slide, and that's the wormholes. So still, almost 20 trillion of blue loot coming out of C5, C6 wormholes. So if you're looking at the overall, if you're all looking at the overall ratio, like what did we have? We had faucets. We look at the overall faucets. Let's look at faucets alone, right? Faucets average, I would say, over the last year, like 120 or something. Yeah. So if 120 is the average of all ISK faucets, and we're looking at 20 trillion of that coming from C5 or 6 wormholes, then you're talking 12.5% of all ISK generated is coming from C5, C6 wormholes. If you compare that to the amount of people living in C5, C6 wormholes, that is rather low. And I know that there's a lot of people that don't want anyone to nerf that income, and I'm not saying that we have to nerf it, but we have to do something to put it into perspective. Like you have to make sure that ISK faucets that the risk reward function is correct and in balance, and you also have to ensure that the distribution of ISK in game is not completely off balance, because that will essentially lead to unhappy players across the board. And so it's not as simple as going in, C5, C6 wormholes should be dropping less loot, or you need to drop the price, but it needs to be recalibrated a little bit, because right now it's just too much. Okay. That's the MER for October 2020.